But I want to dive right into why I'm so excited to talk to you about Excel today. And the first is kind of an obvious thing. Excel is, simply put, the #1 tool for making sense of data in the world today. We know that something like 1 in 5 adults on the planet use Excel. And there are even 3 different Excel World Championships that exist, as kind of a fun fact. And the country of Denmark even asks a census question about Excel. That's all pretty cool, right? It's pretty neat to work on a product like that. I certainly don't have a shortage of cocktail talk when I'm at parties. But why is that so important, and why does that really matter for users? Well, Excel is critical now more than ever because the world of data is just evolving so rapidly. Something like 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. And the demand for data is increasing across all sorts of different industries. So Gartner predicts that 50% of large organizations are going to depend for their competitiveness on data analysis and proprietary analytics in the next 3 years. So it's going to change virtually every industry, every sector on the planet. We know that the data is expanding. We know that the need for data analysis is expanding, but our brains and our skills aren't necessarily expanding at the same rate. And so how do we fill that gap? And the only way to do it is with tools that democratize the access to the world's data analysis. And Excel has a long history of doing that. Even back from the very beginning, 1984, the very first version of Excel, you might know, it actually ran on the Mac. That was the first version. And actually, Excel shipped a version of Windows before Windows shipped anywhere else as a part of Excel to do its window management a few years later. And Excel obviously continued to evolve. The kind of classic Excel that we all think of with VBA and pivot tables is, you can think of the toolbars in Excel 97 and all those classic functionalities. But we've been continuing to really rapidly evolve the product since then, including all kinds of great new functionality. Everything from better ways of getting data, better ways of analyzing and visualizing your data, and better ways of collaborating. So there's an incredible amount of work that's already come. But today, I get to talk to you about something that I find pretty big, and I don't want to oversell it, but I think there is a change happening in the way that the world is understanding its data, in that we are moving into what I think is an early term, and we'll probably evolve it from here, but the intelligence era, where it's no longer going to be enough to have great productivity tools. You have to have productivity tools that are smarter, that are more connected, and that are more personalized. And I'll take you through what I mean by each of those, but you heard in the keynote today that artificial intelligence and machine learning are touching every aspect of everything in terms of technology and really in terms of the way that the world works. And that is going to be very much still true of data analysis as well. And so I want to take you through some of the ways in which the Excel team is beginning to evolve the product to meet the challenges of our modern world of data and data analysis, and embrace the intelligence era, smarter, more personalized, and more connected data analysis tool. Starting with a feature that I'm incredibly proud to talk about. It was in the keynote. How many of you caught the rich data types in Excel portion of the keynote? Kind of blew by, but I think that's great. I'm glad to see some hands. It went by very quickly. I have the luxury of talking about it for a little bit longer because I think it's actually a very, very big deal in the history of spreadsheets. So as you know, or as you might not know, under the covers, Excel really only has 2 types of values in cells. Yeah, there's formulas, but those end up turning into either a number or a string. That's pretty much it. There's error values, there's blanks, but really everything else is a number and a string. What if we could teach Excel more about how to work with compound and rich data? What if instead of holding in a cell the string Microsoft. We could hold the value of Microsoft, the company, in a way that would allow us to access various different properties of that value. That would give us an opening to doing all kinds of much more complicated analysis. And we're also thinking about how we hook that up with the power of the cloud and intelligent services in order to make it even more powerful and more broadly applicable, bringing in things like stock information, entity information that could be about different things like cities or other things like that, in ways that let you work natively within Excel's formulas, but still accessing the rich power of these more compound objects. So what does all that mean? Well, if you're a programmer, if you have dabbled in programming as I have, you could almost think about this as having objects in cells with properties that you can then dereference. If you're a little more straightforward, just think about it, instead of having a single value in a cell, you can have a whole set of values in a cell. But I could talk about it for a while, but I'd rather show it to you. So I'm going to switch here to a quick working prototype of what I'm talking about here. And hopefully I'm able to show it to you. That's going to be interesting. So hang on just a second, make sure that my machine is set up for me to demo and be able to see at the same time. OK, all set. Thanks for bearing with me. So you can see here I have a couple of companies, but really these are just like we were saying before, these are just strings in the cell. Microsoft, Intel. Maybe I want to add another one. Let's add Snap in there. Now, Excel can use the intelligence of the cloud to recognize when you're typing in a series of similar values that can resolve to entities. And what's an entity? It's just a fancy way of saying an object with a lot of data associated with it. And so in this case, Excel has recognized that these are, in fact, companies with stock information. And so when I click on that stock information icon, it's going to actually go back and it's going to convert those from being strings into these entity values, right? And so you notice that it has a name, it has a few properties, and then it has a URL. And why does it have that information? Well, because I can click on that and now get access to all of that information served up via the web. So that's incredibly cool and powerful, because maybe I'm talking, maybe in my spreadsheet layout, I just want to see that one individual value. But now I can let the user reference back into all of that richer data. Of course, this being Excel, you don't just want it sitting in a card there, right? Like, that's nice to read it from time to time. But the real power of Excel is when you can put it back into the grid. Obviously, this is early code. There it goes. So what if I just type in here ticker? OK, that's cool. It pulled down the ticker information as well. But you notice it didn't pull it down separately. I don't know if you can read this. It's a little hard to see. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. But that effectively says, B4.ticker. So the ticker price actually already exists in my spreadsheet. It's sitting there in cell B4, and now I'm just referencing it. Why is that cool? Why is that important? Well, it means I can do stuff that's pretty fancy. But let me add a couple more values before I go and do that. So I'm just going to grab, let's grab the price, and let's grab the high and the low. And maybe I want to add in another one. Now, because Excel has recognized that this column contains entities, now when I type in Starbucks, it's going to automatically guess that that is also an entity of the same type. And it's going to go ahead and get all of the rich information for that, and it'll even fill in all of those other columns for me. So that's pretty cool. It doesn't just work with stocks, though. I could also add in Seattle to this list, and now I have city information, and I can check out the information about Orlando and learn something. about the city that we're in here, about the population, and oh, let's see, they have information about the mayor. That's kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and put the mayor here. All right, so I can use all of this information to get rich information not only in a card form, but also in the spreadsheet. But this also works with formulas. So I can even reference information that hasn't even landed in the sheet yet because it's behind those rich values. So for example, I could say equals, let's see, C4 is Microsoft. Nope, sorry. Yeah, it is C4 dot. And let's say market cap. Oh, B4, thank you. Oh yeah, look at that. I had the wrong cell. This is why I'm just trying to keep my audience awake. You guys, get them extra swag. All right. Mission accomplished. So I could take the market cap of Microsoft, and I could say, hey, what if we had, what if we distributed that evenly among the population of Orlando? So I'm going to take H4, and you can see I have a number of properties here, and I'm going to grab the population. And I can see, oh, that's too big to fit in my cell. Oh, hey, that's nice. We could pay everyone $2 million in the city of Orlando. That's probably less of a useful result than the fact that I don't even have to land those values into the grid before I can start doing rich calculations on top of them. So that's a pretty cool and pretty powerful thing. So we think we're really just scratching the surface in some ways of the great things that we can do with rich values in cells. And coming in the future, so right now we're doing it with publicly available information on stocks and on entities, but in the future we're also planning to make it available for you to create your own entities off of business properties and business objects within your companies. Was there a question? That's a great question. So the question was, are they point-in-time references, or are they effectively connected, and do they stay up to date? And I think the answer is going to be, it depends on the context. And I'll follow up with you offline with some more of our thinking there. But it's a great question. So,
exactly is going to pull those information?
Sorry, can you repeat?
From where exactly from the internet is going to pull those information?
It's a great question. Where exactly on the internet is it going to pull that information? In the case of the rich entities, our plan is that it's going to pull them from Satori Skydance. But for the stock information, we're still working out exactly who our provider is going to be. Yeah, thanks for the great questions. I'm going to take one more, and then I'm going to push on. Is there one more? I thought I saw a hand. Yeah.
Well, if it's truly AI stuff that you do, why couldn't you just select some fields and say, type in, I want to compare these two between poop, and it does it for you without you having to know any of those formulas?
I think, so if I was to summarize the question, it was, why doesn't it just read my mind and put in all the information that I need?
I mean, if you did a help on something, could you say help me and type out something, and it pops it out, and it interprets that and applies those formulas?
Absolutely. So to put the question a little less cheekily, the question was, hey, why wouldn't you just fill out the edges of the grid or something like that, and it would just interpret what all the information was to go inside of that? I'll say this, while we're early in the development of this feature, we're still working on the best UI mechanisms for it. And I think if you watch the pace at which we will evolve the way you can get this type of information into the grid, it is going to move faster over time. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, t-shirt for a great question. So thank you for the questions. So we're really excited about the power of new, richer data types within Excel for all the reasons I just said, bringing more compound and rich data to your cells, enabling powerful calculations powered by the intelligent cloud. But being intelligent isn't enough. It also has to be tailored to you. And so we're introducing new ways to personalize the types of calculations and the way that you can get data into Excel. Now, we've long had custom functions, the ability to create your own functions which either do custom calculations or bring in additional data or do other things that you want to be able to do. that integrate seamlessly into your spreadsheet, just like a sum function or a VLOOKUP. Now we're adding the ability to do that with JavaScript custom functions. And the JavaScript custom functions are going to be write once using modern tooling, and then be able to run anywhere across Mac, PC, iPad, browser. So I want to give you a quick demo of what those are going to look like. So here I have a series of mobile phones from Contoso Phone, a very well-known supplier of mobile phones. And I have some comparison products from other brands. And I want to be, I got my own pricing information out of my own database. Those are all easy to have. But how could I get those other brands in the marketplace's prices? One easy way to do that is to call out to a service that's available on the web where I could get prices in a marketplace. But it's tougher to get that information and pull it into Excel without the help of something like a custom function. So in this case, someone smart in my organization, my Contoso organization, has set up the Contoso price function. And so I can call it just like I would any other function. This has, it starts with Contoso, and I have this get phone price. I can use autocomplete. It just looks like a function like any other. But then when I enter it, you notice it flashed get data there for a second. And that's because it's working asynchronously. Because it's JavaScript, it enables it to go out, get the values, and bring them back in an asynchronous fashion. And behind that, there's modern JavaScript code. And this is what the code looks like for that. I don't generally crack Visual Studio open, so I'm not the best to read this out to you. But I can tell you that it is not only relatively easy to author these, but then once you author them one time, you're able to make them work across web and other form factors as well. So that's great, and it's part of us modernizing our platform to make it available to all of the different endpoints. We'll talk a little bit more later on in the speech about, or the talk about different endpoints and cross-platform. Yeah?
This is only going to be available for JavaScript?
So the question was, will this only be available for JavaScript, the working across platforms? Is that the piece that you're talking about? Yeah, when we looked at the various extensibility mechanisms, there are some that are cross-platform today, and we're not changing that, but we are adding the ability to use JavaScript custom functions across platform. And there are enough layers to our extensibility story that I wouldn't kind of be able to identify which ones are cross-platform and which ones are not right now. Sorry, it's not a great answer. Let me say, for more information on JavaScript custom functions, there's a session on that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. That Michael Saunders is giving. I highly, highly recommend you check that out. Actually, I'll stop there and just say I don't have the full answer for you, but that session will answer all your questions. Yeah.
Why does it happen in Visual Studio rather than like the code editor that's in Excel?
That's a great question. So the question is, why is this in Visual Studio as opposed to the code editor that's inside of Excel? I think the answer to that is that with the custom JavaScript functions, part of our goal is to integrate with the existing modern dev tools versus continuing to rev the internal coding environment that we have. Although it is a good question, I'm not making a forward-looking statement about what you'd see in the future. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, here and then there.
Can you make this available for like the rest of your people in your department to utilize as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the question was, can you make this available for everyone in your organization, write it once, use it everywhere? Absolutely, that is the goal. And again, details on how you deploy custom functions, details on how you write them, it's all going to be in the session tomorrow morning. I know there's probably more questions on this, but given my limited ability to address these in detail, I'm going to refer you to Michael's session tomorrow. Thank you for the wonderful questions. All right, so that's JavaScript custom functions, or functions, apparently. And we're very excited about their ability to extend Excel into other domains of knowledge in ways that are modern and cross-platform. Finally, and most close to home for me, because this is the project that I've worked most closely on, we are using the power of connection with the web and the power of services in the cloud to do more for you, more intelligent things for you, more collaborative things for you. And one of the new ways in which we're going to take advantage of the cloud and the power of services to power your spreadsheets with greater intelligence is Insights in Excel. Insights in Excel is our name for automatically generating intelligent patterns and such as trends, outliers, correlations in Excel with no expertise required, thanks to the power of data analytics and the cloud. And you can think of this as Excel mining your data for insights, such as outliers and trends and correlations, and then returning those results to you as pivot tables, pivot charts, and charts. And this is so cool because not only does it take the incredible functionality and power of Excel and make it much more easy and rapid to use, but it also can help users who may never have even used a pivot table or a pivot chart before to be able to do things that they never thought possible. We know that Excel is the top place in the world to do data analysis, but still, so many of the tools of Excel remain difficult to use or cumbersome in order to get a quick understanding of your data. But with Insights services, with Insights and the power of services, we're able to reduce the time to results as well as rapidly and greatly expand the capabilities of users. So I want to show you what that actually means in a real demo here. Let me make sure I have the right data. So here I have a data set, again, about mobile phone usage. And so I have a series of companies' sales across a number of different years in a number of different countries. This isn't the world's biggest data set. This is only about 500 rows. But making sense of this data via eyeballing it, it's impossible. And if I don't know pivot tables, and even if I do, it can be hard to wrap my head around a picture of what's going on here, let alone find detailed insights or interesting facts within that. But with Insight services, it becomes very, very easy to get not only a high-level picture, but also a series of insights. I simply click the button, and actually, even before I was done talking about it, we've sent the data up to the cloud, analyzed the type of information there, and generated a series of insights which can help me to understand what's going on, starting with a summary of the number of units sold by year, by generation, and then by country and generation. So with these high-level pictures, I can see that, hey, my unit sales took a dip in 2014, but it's on its way back up. I'm mostly selling 4G phones, and USA is kind of, and India have about the same number, but USA is leading in one category, and India has neck and neck between two of the categories of generation there. So that's cool. I can rapidly wrap my head around a high-level picture of what's going on. But Insights goes beyond that and shows me insights such as Litware accounts for the majority of units, and Litware is one of the operating systems of my fictitious phones here. And even this one, units increase over time for generation 4G in country Japan. That's kind of interesting. It actually looks like it increases and then it tailed off a little bit in the most recent year. I want to find out more about that. So I go ahead and insert that chart, and it comes in as a standard pivot table and pivot chart. And that's great because we know that any insight that people get, any analysis that they do, is really only a jumping off point for further analysis, right? Very, very seldom do you find the final answer to all of your questions in the data. And much more likely you found an answer that makes you ask the next question, and the next question, and the next question. And we're trying to support that workflow by providing you with these rich analytical data objects that you can continue to explore and play with. So in this case, I could take this, I could customize it with my own colors, I could make it fit my company's theme, I could do whatever. But even more interesting than that, well, so that's what 4G is doing for Japan, but I wonder how that breaks down by operating system. And so I can take, because I'm a slightly more advanced user, I'm able to use the pivot table here to simply drag OS onto categories. And now I can see that actually the growth in 4G in Japan is largely due to one of the two operating systems. It's primarily in the litware phones. So that's cool. Not only was I able to get a high-level picture and understanding of what's going on in my data, which can sometimes take a long time to do, but I was able to then also find a specific insight and continue to explore and discover more things about it. And so that is Insights. We think that it has the potential to radically improve not only the ease of use of Excel and the accessibility of Excel to a wide audience of users, but also improve the speed with which users across all levels of skill are able to get things done with data analysis in Excel. Pause there for questions. Yeah?
Are you able to do anything to prime the engine? Like say, I really care about this quantity. Can you give me a lot of insights around this quantity within all the cells?
So the question was, is there any way to prime Insights with an understanding of what data you care about the most so that you can get more insights in the areas you do care and less insights in the areas that you don't care? The answer is, wouldn't that be great? As a program manager, I'm torn because I both want to talk to you about what the feature is and does and where we're going with it, and also ask you, is that something that you want? How would you want that? So the answer is yes. And there's a bunch of different ways in which we're doing that already, in which we will do that more. But starting with the mining technology that's built into it is going to look for things that it thinks are more interesting, and over time we're going to tune that to both what is globally the most interesting, but also what is most interesting to individual users, and it's going to become personalized over time. More questions? Yeah.
How do we know it's accurate?
Well, so that's the great thing about it, because at the end of the day, this is just an Excel pivot table and pivot chart. Sorry, question was, how do we know that it's accurate? Very, very veteran question, right? And actually, when we talk about it, we always say that you always have two questions when you get any insight. The first question is, no, wait, what does that really mean? And then the second question is, well, why is that? Or what do I do with that? And so the great thing about it is, because it's an Excel pivot table and pivot chart, you have the ability to do all of the same tools that you can do with any Excel pivot table and pivot chart to understand precisely the data that's behind it and make sure that you can verify exactly what's going on. So I can do things like drill through on it. I can explore it with further drill down and filter it in other ways to understand exactly where the data is coming from and exactly where it goes. So it's a great question. And obviously, over time, we want to make it even easier to understand and verify that the insights that you see are things that you can trust. Yeah, question over there.
I understand what you're saying. A lot of this data is going on up to the cloud and pulling data back. Are you also collecting the data that's being sent to you, or are you mining the data?
Great question. Great question. So the question was, if you are sending the data up to the cloud and to bring back the insights, to what extent are you collecting that information? And the answer is, we aren't collecting any of your content. This is something that we take very, very, very seriously as a part of this. So we have the absolute highest commitment to not only your privacy, but also to the use of your data. So Insights will collect system level information about like things like the size, the data types of data that gets sent up that we use to improve the service, but none of your personal information, none of the strings, none of the values, none of the none of the details of what is being sent up or back is ever something that we collect on the service, other than caching it on a server to spit back results faster. Yeah. So I want to actually go a little bit. Thank you for the great question. I want to go a little bit further and say that all of this is in a framework of privacy that continues to evolve for Office 365, but which we take privacy and compliance very, very seriously. Yeah. Okay, I'll get a question here and then the question over there.
If I open the Excel sheet 3 months later, do I have a different set of insights than available?
That's great. The question was, if I open the same sheet 3 months later, am I going to get the same insights or am I going to get a different set of insights? So we have two rules. One rule is all of the insights that you insert into the grid behave just like Excel analytics should behave, right? So this is a pivot table, it's a pivot chart, it's refreshable, you can continue to explore, it's going to continue to work, right? But then the real question that you're asking is, if I rerun insights on the data, will I get the same insights? And the question is that the same data or is it not the same data, is part of it. And then also, we do plan to continue to evolve the quality of the results that we return. And so for both of those reasons, you're going to have different data, you're going to have refreshed data, you'll find new insights, and also because we fully expect that this is not the absolute final version of the most intelligent results that we can ever give you. We're going to continue to evolve and improve the quality of the insights that we mine. Yeah.
So can I use these two functions that you just demoed together? Use the function to bring in, I want to bring my custom data using a custom function, and then use this insights to analyze.
So the question was, can I use these two functions together to bring in my own custom data and then analyze it? I think that's a natural direction for the two features. I'll say that. So stay tuned. I think, yeah, in the fullness of time, we would love it if the intelligence of the one enhanced the intelligence of the other. And I think that's a natural direction for us to go. Thank you. Yeah.
So the very first feature where you were looking at stocks, do you have to do anything to turn that on, or does like save it as a table or anything like that, or does it just kind of automatically know to do that based on the data?
It's a great question. So the question was, does the first feature that looked up the stocks do you have to do any sort of special thing in order to get it to recognize the data? The ideal is no, although we want to make sure that we're at the same time not popping up things all over the place. And so like you saw there, we're experimenting with different ways to limit when it comes up. And so in that case, it didn't come up on the first one, but when you had 3 in a row, it said, oh, hey, I think I recognize a pattern as to what type of information this is. And now I recognize it. But we're still playing with those rules. And so that part of the experience is evolving. I'm going to pause questions there and save some more to the end, because I have some more great content that I want to make sure I get through. But I really appreciate all the comments and questions. And I will stick around after the session to be available to answer more. Thank you. OK, so that was Insights in Excel, and that kind of wraps up the 3 big features that I get to share with you today and kind of demo for the first time for a public audience. Wow, and we managed to lose the smarter. As far as demo bugs go, I'd say this is among the most benign that I've ever had. But it is smarter, even if it's invisible, smarter, more connected, and more personalized. But I don't only get to show you new functionality today and new ways that we're making the product better. I also get to share with you ways in which we're continuing to innovate in the core of what the product does. And so I'm excited to demo for you what we're doing for collaboration and cross-platform work. And so I'm going to bring up just the most complicated spreadsheet I could whip up in a very short amount of time. So this is some sales volumes and an income statement and product information for our company, Contoso. And you can see that I'm not the only one working on this, because if your eyes are sharp, you notice that someone is making changes there, and they're being reflected in my map chart. And I can actually see up in this upper right corner that it's Olaf in the front row there. Wave for the nice people. And Olaf is actually working on his Mac. So we have, as we announced earlier today, we've integrated the collaboration features across platforms, so you can not only collaborate in the web and Win32, but also on Mac and on mobile as well. And so here I get to see who else is working in the document. I can see that he's editing cell B12, which is Russia's value, and I can see as he might have just made a change to it, and it updates the map there. I can also see the stuff that he has done in the past, and I'm able to see cells that he has been editing. Now, it's incredibly useful to be able to collaboratively author a spreadsheet. And it's changing the way that we actually work within the Excel team already. A slightly more realistic example is probably over here with our booth staffing information. So for instance, I know that I'm going to sign Sanjay up for our 10 a.m. shift. Geesh, I think I could use Jen's help in that shift as well. And you can see Olaf is making changes as well. Oh, you might also notice one of our other cool features here, which is that instead of treating NA values on charts as zeros, we're actually treating them properly as gaps now. I'll talk about it in a second, but this is just one of the ways in which we're trying to do a better job as the Excel team of listening to and being close to our community and taking the feedback into account as we plan the next round of features. And so this was a very highly rated feature on user voice that we're now using actively to drive our feature decisions. Well, it looks like no one else is taking that 3 p.m. slot, so I guess I will have to sign myself up for it. Yay, I was able to fill in our one blank spot left in our booth staffing, even though we have a big spike at 1 p.m. So that's just a little fun, silly demo of how powerful co-auth is for filling in and collaboratively authoring spreadsheets.
You mentioned change on the NA. How is that going to cause issues with formulas that you've written to look for NA versus 0 or blank?
That's a great question. So how is that going to impact formulas that you've written to look for NA versus 0 or blank? And the answer is it's strictly a chart feature. So it's entirely about the representation of NA values on line charts in particular, where they were previously, we acted as if it was a 0. But really, NA or blank actually means, hey, there should be a gap here in the chart, right?
Chart interpretation only, not I'm going down through the middle today and I got an NA and I'm going to wait for it.
That's exactly right. So no other calc values are touched by this. Right? So if you have a formula that refers to an NA cell, answer stays the same. Yeah, back there.
Which file is going to take precedent? I believe that both are the same file, but which version is going to save how you know as the latest? How does it merge it?
Great. The question was, how does Excel know which edit wins? We actually have a service that is running in the background that is streaming in the changes and handling synchronization issues. And so it will pick a winner if they're conflicting edits, and it can actually report back to you if there are conflicts. But because it's streaming in close to real time, it's able to handle even very fast edits while feeling very, very fluid and feeling like you're both just working in the document together. Yeah, one more question about, yeah. Great question. Great question. Your file has to be on SharePoint or OneDrive in order for you to be able to do the co-auth. It needs to be in the cloud. Yep. All right. Excel obviously has had advanced analytic features for years. We've recently made one announcement that I'm very excited about in that area that I wanted to talk to you about, which is making the get and transform data experience our default experience for getting external data into Excel. And how many of you, by a show of hands, have used Power Query or get and transform data? Good, good, good. OK, so it's like somewhere between a third and a half of the room. That's terrific. Whenever I can, I love to talk about this feature because I think it's one of the most powerful things we've done in recent times in Excel. Get and transform data is our name for the new experience of getting external data in Excel, and it covers this area up here. It's based on, if you know Power Query, it enables you to do not only a much wider variety of data connections than previously available, but it also gives you really powerful abilities to query and transform the data as you're bringing it in. There's an incredible amount of rich functionality here that I'm not going to have the time to demo all of today. But I want to show you just kind of a smattering of what you can do. First of all, I just want to show the sheer number of different options you have here. From files is not just CSV or workbooks or XML, but also JSONs and folders and SharePoint. From databases includes a huge variety, and we're constantly adding new connectors. I think sometimes when we talk about all the new functionality we add, it can feel daunting. But if you have the ability to now connect to your PostgreSQL or a better connector for SAP HANA, the way that the Power Query team has been shipping continuous updates to the types and quality of connectors available has been incredibly helpful and incredibly powerful. And I think it represents one of the best examples of us shipping continuously. Another really cool way of accessing data is from Azure. Using Azure HD Insight is incredibly powerful if you haven't checked it out before. Online services, other sources, ability to combine queries. But I'm going to demo what is maybe the simplest, but maybe the coolest feature of all of those. And I already kind of blew by it. But this from folder feature, I think is incredibly powerful. Have you ever had just a folder full of text files and you needed to combine them? Writing a macro or some kind of procedure to pull all of those in can be a huge pain. But now all I have to do is say browse. I'm going to find my folder. Of course, I have data on shark attacks. That's an important type of data analysis that I'm doing. And I pull those in. And it actually goes and it gets all of in this case, there's only 3 of the CSV files in there. But it allows me to take those and then say, hey, I actually want to combine those, and I want to edit the resultant query. So this is incredibly cool. Now I can actually get a query editor that's going to show me the results of all 3 of those files appended together intelligently to make a single large query. I set some options on it, and then I'm going to click OK. And it'll pop up here in the Power Query window for me. And so that's one of the ways in which Power Query and the new Get and Transform data experience, which is the default now as of the last, 6 months? Something like that. And that's one of the ways in which that's powerful. But you notice as it pulled it in, a couple of things are not quite right. This first row of data, well, that's actually headers. And so in Power Query, it's simple. Oh, is there a question? Yeah.
Does that work with any type of file that Excel will open?
The question is, does it work with every type of file that Excel will open? Excel will open a lot of types of files. So it does work with DBF files. It does, yeah. I know specifically the answer for DBF. I don't know the answer for every single type of, like, will this work with Lotus 123 macro files? Like, sorry. Those are all questions that I could help to follow up on. But it does work with a huge range of files. Yeah, question here.
My question was, did your files have header rows in them so that if you grab the column and shifted the data if you needed to, or if they just had the columns and in it? Because you need to copy file, text files if you want to pin data.
That's right. That's right. So the question was, did it intelligently sense where there were header files and map the columns appropriately? In this case, they were set up with the same schema. There are ways that you can handle having mismatched schema. I'm not 100% sure if the default path here would do that in this case. Question over here.
Just a sort of follow up on that. I have used this in one of my small models, but if each and every file has a header and you are trying to do data transformation, it starts giving you errors.
That's right. That's right.
Not convert to number or
There's a great trick for that, by the way. The filter command is your friend for that. So, okay, so the question was, hey, if you have a lot of these headers throughout your file, so every file has its own header. This is very frequently the case, right? Then how do you deal with that? Because here, I can just say, hey, use the first row as headers. But if I couldn't necessarily do that, the trick for that is first to promote the first row to be headers, and then you filter out the cells that say location. Now, it just so happens in this case, we don't have that occurring. But here, if there was another header row that matches up with that, you pick a header that doesn't match one of the values in your file, and then using that simple filter function, you can add a step over here. You notice on the right, we're building up a series of steps of how the query is going to be rerun every single time we re-import that data. And this, in a nutshell, is the most powerful thing about Power Query, right? Because as you're transforming that data, you're not doing something that you can do once successfully. Anyone can do it once, right? You're building up something that you can do again and again and again. And this is why I think Power Query is so incredibly important as a piece of functionality inside of Excel. I see a lot of hands with questions, so I'm going to go there, and then I'll come back over to here. Is it an add-on or is it an add-on? It's an add-on. It comes with Excel post 2016 and later. And there are, I'm looking for Jen's face. There are, I believe Power Query is available with all SKUs. Some portion of Power Query is available with all SKUs. Not the most satisfying answer I could give you, but you will always have the ability to refresh your Power Query queries. The ability to edit is limited to certain SKUs, and I'm going to refer you to Jen for follow-up questions. She raised her hand. She's dressed similarly to Olaf in the other corner of the room there. Yeah, second question.
So my question is similar about availability for everything
Right.
that you're showing.
I'll go through. So the custom UDF, the JavaScript custom functions are. Oh man, I just totally drew a blank on this. Jen, what is the availability of the JavaScript custom functions? Is it now? Developer preview next month for insiders for JavaScript custom functions. Insights availability is insiders fast by the end of this year. And the rich data types are next year functionality. Everything else you see, all available in the product now.
the next year on data types, is it users defined ones or is it the user defined ones will be coming up shortly?
Yeah, the only thing that we have a timeline on now is the rich data types that I demoed of the stock and the entities, and that's next year. Yeah, we had questions over here and then here.
So I see a lot of similarity between what you can do with Power BI and what you can do. What's some of the criteria you use to pick one versus the other?
It's a great question. So the question is, there's a lot of similarity between what you can do in Power BI and what you're doing here. How do you pick where functionality goes in one or the other or both? Our goal is to have the same data stack for both Power BI and for Excel. So what you create here, what I create through Power Query here, I can then run in Power BI. And the work that I do in one place translates to the other. And so our whole goal is for both to benefit from this shared data stack of Power Query and the data model.
I'll plug my session. Wednesday, we're doing an Excel Power BI Better Together, where I actually demo how they both work together and when to use what.
Come Wednesday to hear Olaf, and I'll be helping him out a little bit on that one too. Yeah, totally worthy subject for a longer conversation, but the goal is that your skills and your work is going to translate from one place to another. Question there.
Upper limits perspective, at the enterprise level, can you cap the amount of information that's being drawn down at the individual contributor level?
So the question was, can you create caps for the total amount of information drawn down at the individual contributor level with the Power Query functionality? I am not aware of functionality to do that. Actually, when you started the question, I thought you were going to go in a different direction with it. Yeah, I'm not aware of ability to do that. The other question that I really, and I'm sorry, I'm going to answer the other question too. The other question I thought you were going to ask is, hey, what is the limit? How big are the files that I can pull in with this? Power Query is actually fantastic at handling large data volumes. I have successfully queried hundreds of millions of rows, and obviously I can't pull them all into Excel, but I can pull them all into a data model, or I can do filter and transform operations to pull a subset of them in. So this is absolutely the fastest, best way to pull in absolutely the largest data into Excel. Yeah?
Is there a way to append the data refresh versus refreshing the data?
Yeah. Is there an ability to append the data refresh as opposed to refresh and replace? Yes, absolutely. There's rich functionality for that, yes. Yes. It's a great question. The gentleman asking the question has done some work pulling in queries via the Power Query web query functionality and then publish them to his own server, and he's wondering if there's a way to automate that. I'd need to know more. I'd need to follow up with you a little bit more about what it is that you're trying to do. I'd love to hear more about it, maybe after the session. Thanks for the question. Okay, last question that I'm going to push on.
Yeah, I see there's a bit of latest market directory. In this, is there going to be an object, like an Active Directory object for properties of Active Directory?
The question is, can I just use this to query Active Directory in order to pull properties from Active Directory? In order to see people or properties of those people and be able to, yes. Short answer. Yep. All right, so tons of great questions. Actually, none of you have touched on what I think is the coolest brand new feature of this. So I get to demo one more thing of this before I let us move on. You see this country column. It's currently called 0.1 USA.csv. But you remember there was also an Australia, and there was one other. I want to be able to extract the country information from that. Now, I could write a fairly complicated formula that says, hey, go and find the first dot, and then go find the second dot, and give me the stuff in between after the first dot but before the second dot. But there's a cool new way to add a column through Power Query using a little bit of programming by example intelligence. And that's this column from examples. When I hit that, it's going to go ahead and say, hey, add a column from examples, enter the sample values to create a new column, and Control-Enter to apply. So in here, I can simply type USA, And it gives me a couple of options of what I do, but I just wanted to say USA. And so I'm going to just hit Control Enter. And it went and said, oh, you probably want the text between the delimiters. So it went and it figured out what was the right rule to go from one of the columns over on the left to exactly the thing that I wanted to do. That's pretty handy. And then it even shows me precisely what the formula is that it is generated. So I can see and verify, oh yeah, that is exactly what I was hoping you would do. And then when I click OK, it's going to go ahead and add that as a new column and add the rule down here of inserting the text between the columns. So that's my favorite new feature within Power Query that we've released in the last few months here. So we're constantly updating and improving and expanding the functionality of this. Because this is Power Query, I'm contractually obligated to do an unpivot here because it makes so much sense that I really need to get my data all normalized. I can't stand unnormalized data here. So I'm going to do that. And I can say that that's the year. And this is the number of attacks. And now I'm going to go ahead and delete that original column. And just like that, I've done a bunch of really powerful and complicated data querying all relatively easily. And now I can close and load that back into Excel. And of course, that's the moment it chooses to momentarily hang. But there it is. It's getting the data, and it will pull all of that in. Normalized, cleaned up, merged, and joined. So that is get and transform data, the new default experience for getting data inside of Excel. OK, one more question. Can I run that through Insights? Oh, OK. All right. Oh, challenge. All right. Let's see what we get. I warn you, we made some changes to make sure that the demo actually ran smoothly. So I have no idea what we're going to get for this. The attacks by year are relatively even. Let's see. Australia has the most attacks, followed by the USA and then South Africa. Location has noticeably more attacks. All right, that's a Hall of Shame entry right there. We are the smarts don't start out the smartest, right? And so we're actively tracking what we call our Hall of Fame and our Hall of Shame internally. This is really flying without a net here. Location accounts for the majority of attacks. So one of the things that you often find with with Insights is when you have unclean data, it reacts negatively to that. So yeah, still some work to do before we release that. But thank you for the question, and hopefully you will appreciate my willingness to throw my feature under the bus like that. So that's the get and transform data experience. And finally, I want to talk about something that we care a great deal about, and that is our user community. So we have an awesome and dedicated and massive group of people that consistently make me feel humble to be able to be a part of the Excel team and to invent and work on bringing to market new functionality. We are constantly learning from and understanding more about them. And we do a lot of our listening to customers in person, but we do a lot of listening as well on Excel user voice. So if you feel passionate either about a functionality that you'd like to see or functionality that you would like to see changed, go up to user voice, and your votes really do matter to us. There have been something like 80,000 votes cast on the suggested features there, and we have so far gotten to about 20% of the votes. We've addressed 20% of the votes. That's a start, I would say. But we're very excited to have this channel of active feedback with our users that we then turn into product functionality and real changes to the product. So we talked about one of those changes in the pound NAs on charts, which is a small thing, but actually really important for data visualization. But I'm also excited to demo you just one more of the many things, and that's a new formula feature. And so how many of you have ever come across just a gory Excel function where someone, or a formula, where someone just, 17 layers of nested ifs and like references all over the place and like dollar signs, God knows where. Well, we can't necessarily address all of those situations yet, but this is a particularly nasty one that is pretty common. So if I wanted to create a letter grade function, and I didn't know about VLOOKUP, then I might do it something like this, where I have, and this is actual formula that we took off the web. Hey, if B2 is greater than 97, then it's A+. But if not, then if B2 is greater than 93, then it's A. But if not, then if it, and you could just continue to get these nested ifs. And if you've ever created or edited one of these, you get to the end of the function, you just keep hitting close parenthesis, and then you hit enter, and it goes, no, sorry, wrong, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'll add a few more, bonk, oh, well, maybe that was too many, okay, like, it's basically trial and error until you get it to work. But they're too small, my eyes can't see them. They're all color-coded. Yeah. That third one, I think, is mauve. And the next one is chartreuse. I can't even tell. So we like to have fun with that, but it's a real problem because this is a way that errors can creep into spreadsheets, and then those errors can be a real problem. Still not the most beautiful thing in the world, but this is a much nicer way of making that work. So this is the ifs function, and you might be familiar with some if and some ifs. I was on the team when we added the count ifs and some ifs functionality, some of the most useful functions we have, and we said, hey, why not have just an ifs? And so what this is it basically says if the first condition, then the first value. If the second condition, then the second value. Instead of having all of that nesting there, you just have a series of tests. You hit the first true test, you stop right there. And so there's even a little trick in here at the end. The last condition I made is just true. So whatever happens when you get to that one, it'll do whatever that value is. So that's a little trick, a little tip, and one of our cool new functions that we added with the feedback of our user community. Well, switch is a different function. So the question was, why didn't you name it switch? So what switch actually does is it evaluates the same value in multiple different, and tells you different values based on what it evaluates to. And so I might say switch of F2 and say, hey, if it is D+, then you probably got 64 to 70, I think, something like that. But if it is A, then you got I think it was 93 to 97. But it's always a good idea to try to take audience suggestions for what you're going to demo next. So so you can see, I mean, this is the switch function is another one that we added with user feedback. Very, very powerful, very useful in a lot of circumstances where you don't have to repeat the condition that you're testing over and over again, especially if that is actually an expression and not just a reference. So yeah, we're adding functionality all the time, listening to our users, and it's really exciting to be part of a team that's able to do that. Oh, wow. Wow. So I had 2 PowerPoint bugs, and I think I only had 1 Excel bug. So yeah, we shall see. When this comes back up, I've never had that happen before. Yeah, Olaf points out I should have run my presentation not off of my dog food machine, but rather off of the actual presentation machine. I just want to point out one last feature that we got from user voice, and that's our O365 performance enhancements. Excel Online has done an incredible amount of work to improve in a number of different ways. We added freeze panes. We continue to add support for more and more functionality. One of the best and most exciting improvements, I think, is something that could be easily overlooked, which is performance enhancements. We've improved copy-paste, deleting rows, large file support, filtering, and lots of formulas. If you haven't given it a try lately, go back, give it a try. We'd love your feedback on where we still have work to do, but I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how much snappier and how much faster it is. There's a blog post about that, and the link is in the deck. But go check it out. There's a ton of great functionality. Also in this deck are a number of resources for reaching out to the Office Excel community, which has links to user voice, as well as information about what's new. Not all of the information that I got to show you today is there yet, especially with the features that have yet to be all the way released. But there's a ton of fantastic information available there. And so with that, I'll say thank you and take a few more questions. Yeah?
This is all for O365. How much of this is going to come down to desktop?
It's a great question. So is this all for O365, and how much of this comes down to desktop? When I talk about O365, very often I'm thinking of the O365 Pro Plus, which includes the desktop product. And so there's desktop in the sense of the endpoint and the platform of Win64 or Mac or Win32. Virtually everything you're seeing here is also available on desktop in that endpoint. All the online and subscription features that access the service, our expressed goal is over time, those will increasingly become subscription features. But right now, most of it is also making its way into the perpetual product, the kind of traditional box software, install it once. But I highly, highly recommend the O365 Pro Plus product, not only because you get the latest and greatest functionality, but also because it's more manageable, it's more secure, it's more deployable as well. And I will again say, Jen, it is 9 a.m. tomorrow is your session. Is that correct? Is it the Office Pro Plus, Office 365 Pro Plus session? Yep. Redefining. Say that one more time. Redefining modern productivity. Find that in your schedules and check it out, because we really want to get folks onto all of the latest and greatest functionality. Yeah, question over there. Yeah. Yes. The question was, there were like 20 properties behind the scenes. Had you already pulled all of those down for future use? And the answer as of now is yes. I'm going to go here, then there.
Any plans to incorporate a .NET development experience like the VBA experience?
Yeah, the question is, any plans to incorporate a .NET development experience like the VBA experience? There's already an ability to use .NET to code against Excel and through the Office Interop assemblies, and there is functionality like that. So yeah, I'm curious a bit more what the but more integrated, so that like the IDE was just Alt F11, and now you get Yeah. No, nothing currently to announce. Yeah. Question there.
I have two partners. So the first is for the entities and cities that you showed us. Are there any other examples that you can share, like a similar?
Yeah. No, there aren't. Is the short answer. So the question was, are there other examples that I can share beyond the cities and the stocks of entities that we're going to do? And the short answer is not at this time. I can't, but I will say it is something that we plan to do much more generally. And what's the second part?
The second part is for the cities. Can you help share anything about, like Portland, right? There's
Right.
Portland in many states.
Yes. Yeah. So the question was, how do you choose which Portland? You put in Portland. Is that Portland, Maine? Is that Portland, Oregon? Is that some other Portland? It's a great, rich conversation, and there's more to say, but there is a disambiguation experience already built in. I'm going to take more questions, but I'm going to take them down front. Thank you very much for all of the questions, all the fantastic attention. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you were excited by all the new functionality that we're bringing to market. Thanks.